Ohio Republican Congressman Brad Wenstrup is a doctor and Iraq war veteran, and he's retiring from Congress.
When I first ran, it was my fourth date with my wife when I said that I may run for Congress. And she said, well, okay, doctor, if that's what you feel compelled to do, then you should. I'm getting married and shortly thereafter had our son and then have our daughter. So my kids are 10 and 6. So it wasn't something I planned to do for a long, long time. Actually, I probably was there longer than I thought I would be. And it's primarily because of family. And yeah, I've always felt a sense of duty. I think it's part of why I wanted to become a doctor. It's been a great profession. And then a doctor soldier and deployed to Iraq, another call to service. And after that, I was giving talks on leadership and service, and people in my community said you ought to run for office. So that's how I got here to begin with. And certainly I have stayed longer than I thought, but that's because I was enjoying it, and I still do. But it was time to come home. My wife and I really had made the decision, and we announced on my son's birthday. And if you saw my video announcement, that they're all in it, and that gives you another reason why it's time to spend more time at home.
Okay, so these articles out there saying, it's Republican dysfunction is to blame for all these people wanting to retire. It has been a heck of a year, right? 2 speaker votes that took days, close to government shutdowns. But for you, it sounds like you would be willing to stay on. It's different, or was that part of your decision?
That wasn't. That was definitely historic. To see what was taking place as far as with the speaker election and controversies. But, the place has always been fraught with controversy. Our founders made it difficult for a reason, and it is difficult, and democracy is messy. But I'm glad to live in a country where we get to elect our leaders. And governing free people is not as easy as being a dictator, that's for sure. So that wasn't fun. I don't admit it, but that.
I would imagine. But do you think others are leaving for certain reasons that are maybe because it's less fun? There's a quote from Congressman Earl Blumenauer that the politics of it isn't fun. But have you talked with other members like Dan Kildee of Michigan, Ken Buck of Colorado? Not to necessarily speak for them, but are you gleaning anything from why so many are leaving Congress right now?
Well, it's interesting because Dan Kildee came in with me, and we are on Ways and Means Committee together, and we're friends. And I would say for the last several years, as you see some of the things that take place, it wasn't the same as when we got here. And I think he and I and Derek Kilmer, another Democrat, I think we could probably say, some of our friends have been defeated and aren't here anymore. Jackie Walorski was a close friend of mine, and she died. And so, it becomes a little bit different place than you were used to. And so that may have something to do with it, because it's kind of like going back to your high school or college a couple of years after you graduate, and it's not quite the same. So, and I felt that somewhat, but not that had any part to do with our decision. It was really a family decision more than anything else. And, I intend to keep working when I leave here. And as I have said in the video I put out, I'm going to keep working to defend truth, justice, and the American way, which is what I grew up with watching Superman as a kid.
Does that mean going back into practice, or does that mean are you going to become a lobbyist?
That is not in the plans. No, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I may practice a little bit. That is definitely it. But I think there should be opportunities to engage in some things involving national security and health, 2 things that I've been very much involved since I've been here and throughout my life.
You're on the coronavirus task force. We watched some of those hearings that you chaired. You do bring the medical mind and the military mind, right? But do you feel like your work is done on that committee? It feels like, historically speaking, we still have a lot of unanswered questions. Or do you feel like you're maybe not getting where you wanted to be on that issue? Or how do you feel leaving that part of the job?
Well, that subcommittee is only for 2 years. And so, yeah, we do have more work to do. And I would say that on some of the parts of this, I have been and still continue to do on the Intelligence Committee, which is why I think the Speaker wanted me to stay on the Intelligence Committee is because when COVID hit, I got very much involved with trying to discover the origins of COVID. But not only that, I was involved with trying to figure this out medically, what was going on with Operation Warp Speed. How do we treat this problem? How do we test for it? How do we diagnose? And so that all fits in with what we're trying to do with the subcommittee, which is to do better the next time, and so that we can be better prepared and maybe even predict the next pandemic. And but I think as much as anything else, as part of this is we want to find ways that we can restore the public's trust in our public health system. And I think there are some things there that will come out that if we make some changes, we can do better as a country.
Okay, a few more for you. And because you're leaving, you get to speak more freely, right? So as part of anyone's calculation in your mind, and this might just be anecdotal from just talking to your fellow members, is any part of anyone's calculation about leaving any anticipation about how it might feel if former President Trump is the nominee again, and quite possibly if he's elected again?
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at all. Matter of fact, from the people that are leaving, from both sides of the aisle, the conversation has been, what can we get done in these last 13 months? Okay,
and if there was any dysfunction, right, that some of these articles are referencing about why people are leaving, if there was any of this dysfunction, it seemed to have come from members who said, we want to focus on reducing spending. And if you don't focus on that, then we can't vote for measures to avoid a government shutdown, right? And they were blamed for holding everything hostage. Right? That was what the White House said. They were holding it hostage. So, but their concern was this debt. I think we're close to $34 trillion.
Yeah.
If the way they did it is not the way to do it, if withholding votes on spending to avoid a government shutdown isn't the way to address the debt, then what is in your mind?
If I look at the many things that we've been able to accomplish here within our office in Congress, it goes to something that I said when I first got elected. I said, I'm going to have my own PAC, and that's to try to be persuasive, articulate, and convincing. Because if you have a good idea, and reducing the debt is definitely one of them, and we've got to do this, you've got to be persuasive as to how and why we do it. Unfortunately, politics gets in the way too often, because I can remember, when you try just to reform and save a program like Social Security, you're trying to kill your grandmother. That becomes the political cry. So those are the challenges that are out there, but we have to do this, and we have to do this together. And unless we have the House, the Senate, and the White House, you have to find ways to persuade others that it's the best thing to do for the country. And rather than just saying, well, I can't vote for that. Well, I understand that. And you don't have to vote for certain things, but to get what you want, you're going to have to try and rein your colleagues in. And I think that there needs to be more of that done by a lot of people here. That it's not just say what you're against and things you'll never do, but how do you turn the tide? And that means working with your colleagues, and sometimes across the aisle. I want to get appropriations done. I don't like CRs. I don't like them at all. I want us to do our work. I want us to run like a business and get our work done and do it on time. But I look at Mike Johnson taking over as Speaker. Well, he's faced with a battlefield that's in front of him. And I think what we just did, for example, with the CRs, is to lay down a bunt, if you will, to advance the runner. We had to lay down the bunt so that we can continue to work on appropriations, and appropriations that should have a conservative bent to it in the House. And I think that that's what we have been doing as we do get through appropriations, but we've got to do it together.
And finally, on that Social Security front, we spoke to somebody with the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, and he said you cannot seriously talk about this debt without talking about entitlement reform, Social Security, Medicare. I know it's sensitive. Like you just said, you get accused of killing grandma. But for those of us in our 30s and 40s, I mean, yeah. we want somebody to just be honest with us. Should we prepare for like a different kind of safety net? Is anybody going to address this and not be so afraid about losing the votes, and just tell us what we need to prepare for if these are going insolvent?
Well, I'm on Republican Study Committee and been on the executive committee, and I and several members there have said if reforming these programs so that they can continue to exist for the next generation like you, if that means it cost me my job, then it was worth it because it's something that the next generation can thank us for. And, it's just like insurance. You have to look at things from an actuarial standpoint, and you have to decide, how we're going to save this. I mean, to be honest with you, you look at something like Social Security, it's your children that are paying for you, and if you look at numbers, if we have 1.8 children per family, that's not going to be enough for them to cover down for their parents, because that's really how this was all set up, is the next generation is paying forward for the current generation. And so it's supposed to be passed on like that. And we got to just face some of those realities and make adjustments so that we can save these programs. We have to be honest with where things are headed and why we might have to make some changes if we're going to keep it alive for the next generation like you.
Outgoing Congressman Brad Wenstrup, thank you so much for joining us.